From luxury electric vehicles to reusable rockets to tunneling underground.
That's very cool, isn't it? Yeah.
To creating and adapting AI. The founder of SpaceX is just as innovative and synonymous with SpaceX itself. With the ultimate dream to go to Mars, Elon Musk made history in May by sending the first humans into space through a private commercial entity. All this under a budget a fraction the size of its competition. Here we will go through that historic day and how it all came to be. Let's begin.
We are looking at history about to be made here at the Kennedy Space Center. This is absolutely nail-biting, and everybody just wants to get a glimpse of this, waiting to see what will happen.
You're looking at the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station. It will be the first time a private company launches humans into orbit.
I'm the chief engineer of the thing, so I just like to say, if it goes right, it's a credit to the SpaceX and NASA team. If it goes wrong, it's my fault.
You believe that?
Yeah, absolutely.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Elon Musk fled from South Africa's mandatory military service in 1989 when he was 17 to attend Queen's University in Canada. His eyes were set on the United States and would go on to attending Pennsylvania University. Musk would get 2 undergraduate degrees, one in physics and one in economics. He went to a graduate program in Stanford, only to drop out and join the internet boom. Chairman told him he probably wanted to hear from Musk again. Musk would later confirm this by saying he was correct. I've never spoken to him since. Living off of Jack in the Box
Try my balls!
and oranges with his bird Kimball, where he would typically live on $1 a day.
The worst part was eating a Jack in the Box. Hopefully you guys aren't, whoever's from the company's not here. And it was one of those like 3 in the morning things, and I took a milkshake, and I was so tired, and there was something in the milkshake, and I literally went like this. That's your standards just dropped to nothing.
Musk and Kimball would spend days hosting the website Zip2 while pulling it down at night for maintenance, all while living in the office and taking showers at the Y. It was basically the new Yellow Pages for the web. For the time, this was revolutionary software. It helped transition major newspapers like the New York Times go online. Elon and Kimball later pitched this to the actual Yellow Pages.
It was a funny time because it made so much sense to us, but we had literally had a guy throw a Yellow Pages book at us. He was a very senior executive, and tell us, do you ever really think the internet is going to replace this?
Yeah, that went well. Musk ended up selling Zip2 to Compaq for $307 million in cash and $34 million in stocks, with him walking away with a cool $22 million. Musk went on to start X.com, which eventually became PayPal. Maybe you've heard one of your friends ask if you have Venmo, annoyingly, which is owned by PayPal. Bottom line, he was the largest stakeholder in the company. He and the board sold it for $1.5 billion to eBay, where he got a nice $165 million payday. This was the birth of SpaceX.
I guess, when I was in college, I thought about things that would most affect the future of humanity, and there were 3 areas that I thought would have the biggest impact, and those were the internet, sustainable energy, of which solar power is the production side, and electric cars the consumption side, and then humanity becoming a multi-planet species. If I can do something that would galvanize public interest, and then that public interest would translate to additional appropriations for NASA and increase their budget, then maybe they could do it. So actually, what I sort of thinking I would do is send a small greenhouse to the surface of Mars with seeds in dehydrated gel, and then upon landing, hydrate the gel and grow the plants. And the public tends to respond to precedents and superlatives. So this would be the furthest that life's ever traveled, the first life on Mars, and you'd have this great shot of green plants on a red background, and I thought, okay, maybe that would get
It's a money shot. You got to beam
that
that
would be
back.
the money shot, yeah.
Sounds simple, right? He sought out support from the space advocacy nonprofit Mars Society, which put him in touch with aerospace consultant Jim Cantrell, who had worked for NASA. This was one of many cold calls from Musk, a lot of which he'd been turned down. Cantrell had been driving and could barely make out what Musk was saying. All he could make out was that an internet billionaire named Elon Musk needed to talk to him. It felt like a heavily rehearsed elevator pitch. He recalled Elon saying, "I'm Elon Musk. I'm an internet billionaire. I founded PayPal and X.com. I sold X.com to Compaq for $165 million in cash, and I could spend the rest of my life on the beach drinking Mai Tais. But I decided that humanity needs to become a multi-planetary species to survive, and I want to do something with my money to show that humanity can do that. I need Russian rockets, and that's why I'm calling you." So naturally, Cantrell would quickly become an early SpaceX employee. Musk and Cantrell went to Russia in 2001 and ended up rocket shopping to look into some repurposed ICBMs. A little bit of paying some corrupt cops to get there, a few dead bodies on the road, and congratulations, you're negotiating with the vodka-fueled Russian space program. Resi, who was with Elon at the negotiations, recalls, "Then we started having meetings with the Russian space program, which is basically fueled by vodka. We'd all go into this little room, and every single person had his own bottle in front of him. They'd toast every 2 minutes, which means 20 or 30 toasts an hour. To space, to America in space." I finally looked over at Elon and Jim, and they were passed out on the table. Then I passed out myself. The Russians would absolutely Musk on the price and didn't take him seriously until they found out about his venture with PayPal. They thought he was absolutely crazy, but realized he was crazy with deep pockets. Musk had hoped to buy them for $10 million each, and by the second negotiation, the Russians had come to Los Angeles. At this time, they told Musk and Resi, "We can't continue this unless you give us $5,000 in cash." With the intent to buy them for $21 million altogether, Musk flew back to Russia with Cantrell. One of the Russians decided to scream at Elon, however, with spit flying out of his mouth and all. They taunted him and said that they wanted $21 million for each rocket, to Musk's disappointment. Cantrell recounted to Esquire, "Oh, little boy, you don't have the money?" Cantrell and Musk would fly home empty-handed. However, on the flight back, Musk turned to Cantrell and said, "I think we can build a rocket ourselves."
It was not a question of will, it was a question of way. And if people thought there was a way to do it without it fundamentally affecting their standard of living, then they would support such an endeavor.
I think we're at the dawn of a new era, and I think it's going to be very exciting. What we're hoping to do with SpaceX is to push the envelope and provide a reason for people to be excited and inspired to be human. The odds of me coming into the rocket business, not knowing anything about rockets, not having ever built anything, I would have to be insane if I thought the odds were in my favor.
Why even begin?
When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor.
With no knowledge of rocket science at the time, he would look for established engineers and try to hire them, only for him to end up as the chief engineer. Hardly any experienced engineer wanted to join, which made it challenging for Musk. This man would just pick up books, read, and hire rocket engineers straight out of college. He was met with serious concern from his friends. His friends would literally show him footage of rockets exploding and tell him it's not a good idea. On top of that, he's the head of Tesla, requiring a substantial amount of time as well. The cost of a rocket launch for NASA ran around $100 to $260 million. The goal was to achieve a total cost of around $80 million to launch, and to one day drop the price to $10 million over the long run. The problem with rockets at the time is that they can't be reused. There's over $100 million equipment, and it all goes to waste for one-time use. Another issue was the markups. There's all these different manufacturers that bring up the price insanely. On top of that, there's opposition from a few of those who inspire Musk to do this.
I do not believe that would be in our best interests. I'm very concerned that the new plan, as I understand it, will prohibit us from having human access to low Earth orbit on our own rockets and spacecraft until the private aerospace industry is able to qualify their hardware under development as rated for human occupancy.
Now is the time to overrule this administration's pledge to mediocrity.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight in the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that because those guys are, you know, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. You know, I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Did you expect them to cheer you on?
So they're hoping they would.
What are you trying to prove to them?
What I'm trying to do is to make a significant difference in spaceflight and help make spaceflight accessible to almost anyone. And I would hope for as much support in that direction as we can receive.
The failures were spectacular.
This was a do or die, right after a market crash. If this fails, the hard work and 12-plus-hour days he dumped so much into could all be for nothing to show for. On top of that, his dream for a sustainable future and electric cars through Tesla had been struggling. Musk wrapped up just enough for one more launch.
T-minus 20 seconds.
Stage 2 tanks pressing for flight. Flight computer has control of the vehicle.
3, 2, 1.
Successfully deployed. The first stage will soon begin its series of 3 burns to head back towards Cape Canaveral.
Okay, where's the... Okay, this is bad. Potentially bad. If that 4th launch hadn't worked, that would have been it. We would have not had the resources to mount a 5th.
You couldn't have gone out at that point.
Yes, death would have been, I think, inevitable.
The fight wasn't over, however, as Musk still needed funding. Luckily for him, NASA signed a contract for more launches and a commercial deal. This is where NASA transitioned away from building their own equipment to providing commercial bids for them. Remember the approximate $260 million cost to launch a rocket? After many failed attempts and successful redesigns over 12 years, SpaceX has brought the cost down on launching a Falcon 9, Star Wars inspired, for NASA to $62 million a launch. He even plans to launch a series of satellites into orbit in order to provide global access to the internet in all places and to help fund his mission to Mars.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. And so rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream.
Just, acknowledge the incredible work of the people at SpaceX and NASA and everyone in creating this technology, and in what has culminated in this incredible launch today of getting astronauts back to orbit after almost a decade, should really get people, right on the heart of anyone who is has any spirit of exploration. And the United States is a distillation of the human spirit of exploration. I think this is something that's particularly important in the United States, but appeals to everyone throughout the world who has within them the spirit of exploration.
SpaceX made history on that day as the first private company, to send people into space. No matter what you say about Elon Musk, that was probably one of the biggest moments in America that brought people together, even if just for a moment. Hopefully it inspired you a little bit. Hopefully you can see the light in America and that we can overcome just about anything. And for a man to have come from South Africa and come all the way to here in California and live off of $30 a day for years with his brother, only to accomplish so much in half a lifetime and help progress humanity. It doesn't matter if you're a Tesla bear or you don't like Elon. What just happened and what happened with the company, it just seems so inspiring. A man who just wants to do good for our world, and I make this clear that you can do anything you set your mind to, and that hopefully this inspires you to do something that you really have always wanted to do but can't really or haven't really decided to do it yet. I hope that you're inspired to potentially invest or just do something crazy, because you only get so much time in this world. And that's what I hope to achieve with this channel. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you liked the video. Leave down in the comments that you watched until the end. And thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon.